Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Building the Bridge to Personalized Learning in Classrooms, 6 Essential Hallmarks. I'm your moderator, Jenna Parsamore, Marketing Manager at McGraw-Hill Education. Before we get started, now's a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. This webinar is being presented in listen-only mode, which means you will be able to hear the presenter, but they won't be able to hear you. However, that doesn't mean you cannot participate. Please type any questions you may have for the presenters into the Q&A panel bar, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the session. At the conclusion of this webinar, you will be receiving an email that contains the slides from today's presentation, as well as Janet and Cassandra's white paper on this topic. Today we will be hearing from Janet Piddock, Curriculum Director with McGraw-Hill Education, and Cassandra Corbin-Thaddeus, Director of Personalized Learning at McGraw-Hill Education. Janet is an educator committed to inspiring students to learn by providing personalized experiences that are interactive, engaging, and challenging. She has taught elementary school, preschool, special ed, and Algebra 1, and has overseen marketing, product management, and product development in mathematics, literacy, science, and early childhood. Cassandra directs the blended and personalized learning processes of school districts globally. She helps district leaders create a vision and goals to design 21st century teaching and learning opportunities. In addition, she provides blended learning professional development experiences for school leaders nationally and internationally. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Janet. Welcome, Janet. Welcome, Janet.
Hi. So I want to, before we go too far into the presentation, I want to be sure that everyone can access those two boxes that Jenna was just talking about. So the first one is there's the QA box, where that is a place where you enter any questions that you'd like us to cover by the end of the session. So what I'd like to do is make sure everyone knows where that is. So if you could all just put a little question mark in the Ask a Question box and submit it so that I know that you know where to go to do that. I'm going to wait and see if anything shows up. So I'm not seeing any. There we go. We've got a bunch of people now putting those in. Perfect. The other thing is I saw a lot of people as you were coming on were putting things in the chat box. This is a place where you can comment or talk to each other. I'll be asking you to maybe comment on things you see or hear that interest you, that aren't questions, but just a way for you to stay engaged and to have kind of some important side conversations and connections. So I want to make sure that you all know where the chat area is. And once everybody puts the word yes in there, then we'll be ready to move on, and now you know what the two things you're supposed to do and where you can be interacting with this presentation. So go ahead and enter yes in the chat box. As many of you as possible, please enter yes in the chat box. Getting yeses. Fabulous, perfect. All right. I'm going to start off talking about an educator. This is Jane Ellen Whittier. She started teaching. She started her educational journey in the early and mid-50s in Ohio. She was at the Special Ed Diagnostic Clinic at Ohio University, and she learned about how to diagnose, learn about her students, and create instructional and learning environments to meet their needs. And so this knowledge, acknowledgement that meeting students' individual needs is not a brand new thing. It's not something that came along with technology. That desire has been around for a long time. When she moved into teaching in a regular classroom in the mid-50s, she realized that her students, when she started giving them a pretest on their mathematics, she discovered they already knew the first unit's material, the second unit. She found out that 90% of her students could pass the end of grade test. And therefore, she started to bring into her classrooms materials and group her students in ways in mathematics that allowed her to differentiate and to meet their individual needs. So then as she moved forward in her career and became a special ed teacher again, she brought in multitudes of materials talked to students about what worked for them, and started to actually personalize her instruction. That journey of hers led to 12-hour days, 16-hour days, and this is one of the things that technology can help us, because now technology can take some of the burden off of us as far as manually personalizing, manually meeting the needs of each individual student where they are. So it allows a kind of scaling that we haven't been able to do before. And I think this is part of why personalized learning is now taking off in classrooms. So we're going to have a little, we're going to start out with some polls so that we can gain a joint understanding of definitions. So all of these definitions are continuing to develop in the field. So what I like to do is, just for the case of our talking right now, is to define these things so that we have some joint understanding. So what I'd like everyone to do is look at this poll question. Differentiation is when. Choose one of these four that best describes and submit. Okay, I think, let me see here what's going on. All right, I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to respond so that I can get as many responses as possible to see where people are with their idea of the definition of differentiation. All right, 10 more seconds. People are still choosing, but all right, I'm going to go ahead and reveal the poll results. So differentiation is when, yes, the teacher drives instruction and adjusts for groups of students. So so that's two things, is it's groups of students and the teacher is driving instruction. All right, here's the next terminology. Individualization is when, and please choose the one that best describes individualization. Okay, just a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So yes, students may, in individualization, students may learn based on individual granular goals, but the best answer here is that, again, it's the teacher is the driver and the teacher is designing the learning situation for individual learners. It doesn't have to be in granular goals. It could be a very broad goal. But in general, it is based on an individual goal, although often it could be all students have to meet these particular goals. I'm just creating instruction for individual students on each of those goals. And so nobody chose competency-based instruction. Competency-based instruction could also be part of individualization or not. Okay, and here's the last one. Personalization is when. Again, choose the best answer, please. Okay, I'm beginning to get some answers here. So this one's a little bit more split, which is really interesting. So there's a distractor that's gaining people's attention. All right, just a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So I think for this presentation, I'd like to define personalization as when the teacher and the learner collaborate to determine the needs, plan, and learning design. The student is often in control of the goal, pace, and design, or one of those pieces. There is a movement towards giving students more control of those things. Often personal interests are important, but really the definition is this collaboration and more student ownership of the learning. Or that's how we're going to talk about today. So here's a table that just compares the three terms. So differentiation, you're going to be talking about groups. Teacher doesn't have time to do the differentiation, or doesn't take the time to differentiate down to the individual level. It's a group needs. The groups may have different goals or the same goals. Sometimes teachers might say, we're all going to learn about multiplication, but this group is going to learn it this way. This group is going to learn this way. This group, so they all have the same objective, but they may have different ways that they're going to learn, or different ways that they're going to produce material that shows that they've understood the instruction. Individualized, each student has their own objectives. The main difference between individualized and personalized is often the teacher is the one who's doing the assignment in individualized, and in personalized, the teacher and the student co-create the experiences. There's much more attention on the student taking ownership of the learning. Also, in individualized, often individual student is on their own path and it remains the individual student, whereas in personalized, you can make a plan where the individual student can be working in a variety of groupings depending upon how their learning plan intersects with other students' learning plans that are working in the same classroom. All right. We're going to move on now to a little bit of an overview about why personalized learning. And I guess the biggest thing that hits me is, we have to prepare today's students for tomorrow's world, and we can't do that with yesterday's learning models. We know that students have much more input into their lives and into their out-of-school lives as far as sound, video, written and visual information, social media. All of this is happening to me, and they're used to that fast-paced, visual, responsive environment. And so to come to school that's much quieter than that is difficult, because students are expecting that rich interactive learning environment. So students want to engage with learning content that interests them, and they really yearn for that control over what and how they learn. So what we know for sure is that tomorrow's world is going to be changing. We can't reliably predict what it's going to be like, but one thing we can predict is that persistent, self-directed lifelong learners are going to be best positioned to prospect in tomorrow's world. And I think that personalized learning, where students have to take control of their own learning and responsibility for their own learning, is the best way to prepare students, or one of the best ways to prepare students for their futures. So let's talk about a continuum of opportunities for personalized learning, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to buy this personalized product and that's going to personalize everything for my students. Well, personalization is not a thing. It's actually a process. It's an action. So what we're doing all along is educators working with students to personalize their learning environments. So we can kind of slide. We can think about different attributes of a classroom, and we can kind of slide one way or another to optimize opportunities or limit opportunities for personalized learning. And you don't necessarily have to have everything personalized to work, but to optimize learning for students. So you make these decisions on a case-by-case basis. So one thing you think about is is how teacher-directed versus student-centered things are. So when you slide it over towards the student-centered side, that's more what defines personalized learning. Using more technology is often a good way, as we talked about before. It's a good way to enable teachers to be able to scale doing more personalized learning in the classroom. It's very difficult when the teacher has to be the one delivering and monitoring and engaging all of the students in the classroom, for that teacher then to be doing multiple different things at the same time. Good technology can help with that, and good technology can give teachers information and data that allows them to make decisions about how to group students, how to consult with students about where they're being successful and where they're not, and what they're doing. So technology can help optimize opportunities for personalized learning. Same thing, one size fits all software versus adaptive software. The more that it's adaptive, the more that it's working with the students at their pace on the things they need to learn, rather than everyone do this assignment today. That's less personalized than something that's more adaptive, responsive to student input. Another one, which is, this one is difficult for a lot of schools. I've been talking to a lot of superintendents. They like the idea of personalized learning. They're less embracing of competency-based movement through standards, because that means that not everyone is going to be working on the same thing or get through all your grade level standards. If you're a third grader and you're still working on first grade standards, you may not get to your third grade standards. And that's a little harder because of test scores and because of the way that institutions are set up. It challenges systems more. People agree that it doesn't make sense to move students to harder standards that are dependent on easier standards until they master those standards, but exactly how to do that is a challenge. So this idea is something that we're all grappling with. I see lots of teachers and superintendents and educational leaders grappling with this, and we have to continue to listen to each other and work together to figure out models that support competency-based learning so that students can move through at the right level of challenge and the right level of engagement. As teachers and schools look at being innovators and moving to personalization, we see that in any one school, you're going to have teachers who are skeptics, who just stay with what's worked for them. And these could be excellent teachers, but they're not terribly innovative, all the way to technology enthusiasts. So we will find, and we'll be continuing to talk as we move forward about how the benefits of transitioning from a traditional to innovative teacher. You're going to serve your students better, most likely, and in a more engaging ways, allowing them to move forward or to spend the time they need for understanding by moving into personalized learning. But how do we support everybody who's along this continuum? What can people be doing along this continuum? So having said that, I want to talk about that teacher who's a skeptic. That teacher who's a skeptic could be at the pinnacle of traditional instruction. They could be the best, most amazing teacher at teaching traditionally that ever existed. They could be at the pinnacle of that. And there's a lot of good to happen there. But we do recognize that most likely there are students in that classroom where everyone's doing things at the same time, they're working on the same material at the same time, where it may not be serving students, particularly students either who are very advanced and ready to move on to something more challenging, or students who are just having a difficult time because they have weak foundations. So how do we help that teacher who's at the pinnacle of traditional instruction move to the pinnacle of innovative instruction? Well, a lot of times we say, we have leaders and innovators and principals and whoever, or webinar leaders who say, go for it, just take a leap and leap from the pinnacle of traditional learning to the pinnacle of what your vision is for innovation. And what happens is some people make it. A lot of people fall into the river, into the abyss that's between the two pinnacles. So what we need to do is we need to build a bridge that allows more people to cross and make a journey from being excellent traditional teachers or being traditional teachers to being more innovative teachers that really center on the needs of their students and allow students to take more control of their learning. So we want to talk about how it's not all or nothing. There's lots of places along that continuum that work, and there's some lessons that work in a traditional way, and some lessons and some learning that's going to work best in a more innovative way. So we're going to spend most of the rest of our time talking about the hallmarks of personalized learning and how you can use those to build a bridge. And my colleague Cassandra is going to be talking about that.
Great. Thank you, Janet. So as Janet said, we are really wanting to make sure that we are giving you some, I'm sorry, Janet, I'm getting some feedback. So we really want to make sure that we are giving you some of best practices as it relates to the hallmarks of getting from one end of the personalized learning bridge to the other end. And we realize that some people are going to take baby steps. Some folks are going to actually crawl. Others are going to make those leaps that Janet just talked about. But in any case, moving forward is progress. So the first hallmark along this personalized learning journey is a rich network of professional development and supports for teachers. So just as our students, Janet was just speaking about the unique learning goals that students have as it relates to personalized learning, our teachers have those same needs as well. So teachers should continue to seek these opportunities to experience personalized learning for themselves, really by participating in in-person professional learning opportunities. And so experiencing things like the EdCamp models, and really where this is modeling choice in the learning experience, is a really great example of how to do that in the classroom. So teachers can also seek online courses about personalized learning and work with their administrators to really create these ongoing program-embedded opportunities for teachers to work with each other and share best practices. So many of you are probably participating in PLCs at your schools, or even in some Twitter chats in the communities. So really, again, all great ways to access some skilled experts. But most importantly, districts and administrators really continuing to create this time for teachers to interact and problem solve and really share some of these promising practices that are now coming out as teachers are experiencing more success and evidence of practice in their learning. So to really move from this traditional to innovative classroom environments, that's something that we really emphasize, that is embedded in the culture of professional development. So the second hallmark really builds on the first. Once we have teachers that are very confident and ready to move in this direction, then there's a collaboration that happens between the teachers and the students. And so this is really, again, Janet mentioned very clearly that this teacher-student collaboration does equal personalization. So today's students must be able to adapt and be flexible. We're expecting our students to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, and then also to really evaluate and use information effectively. So just knowing that there's so much information coming at our students, and they are engaging in the world inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So teachers are who are really looking at optimizing this personalized learning experience. We really value this process of now becoming the facilitator and really mentoring students to choose appropriate goals and evaluate which experiences will help them achieve those goals and iterate on that based on the data that they're finding. And Janet just mentioned as well this CBE. And so here, one of the things that's really important is placing a high priority on, when we begin to think about personalized learning environments, we really want to think about there's that conflict that happens between what students are supposed to learn versus what students are ready to learn quickly really becomes obvious. So typical grade level objective pacing charts may not align with how long it takes certain students to learn a certain skill. So this is true for subjects that depend heavily on prior knowledge, such as math. So while teachers can make some decisions about how to deal with the conflict at the classroom level, learners need to really consider how personalized learning will impact grade level goals and pacing, as Jenna just mentioned. And to more effectively design the learning environment, educators and learners really need data about which proficiencies students already have and how they're going to grow toward those goals. So to that end, educators should have access to a variety of data sources, including thinking about professional development and what data means there, and also ongoing conversations, again, with colleagues around best practices and really how to use the data that's available. And when we talk about data here, we're thinking about the summative data as well as the formative data. So that the more frequently you can access data, the better. And then the fourth hallmark, and this is one that comes to front of mind for most people when we think about personalization. As Janet said, this is a process and not a thing. But technology, the infrastructure is so important, and immediately people think about internet accessibility, think about bandwidth, quantity and quality of devices, and so all of these are really important. But we know that if we really want to cross that bridge from traditional to innovative classrooms, we have to support our teachers in a timely manner when, not if, but when technology goes awry. So really thinking about how to have a plan and being very creative with that plan. So in some cases, districts, and schools may have tech support right on site, which is great. But not a lot of districts can afford tech support on site just to support teachers on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis. So therefore, a tech-savvy teacher or a tech-savvy student would be great places to start to resolve some of these issues quickly so that teachers are not giving up in this process. So the next hallmark is really looking at how then can technology transform the learning in the classroom. And so we know that just having technology in a school or in a classroom is no guarantee that it's going to offer more engaging and personalized experience to students. So really analyzing and planning technology used through the lens of the Satmar model can improve chances for transformation. So there are 4 levels in the Satmar model, and that's substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And you'll see in this slide here, substitution really describes a situation in which technology is used as a direct replacement for a task normally done without technology. So there's really no functional change here, and we're going to look at an example in just a moment. Augmentation occurs when we are using technology a little bit more effectively than we would without technology. So the task is happening with a little bit more impact, but the learning experience is still very similar to what it might be if we didn't have technology. So those first 2 levels of the Satmar model really enhances the experience, but the next 2 levels, modification and redefinition, is really where transformation happens in the learning experience. So looking at modification, and this is where we can introduce a significant functional redesign of the learning task. And so this is where tasks happen that may not necessarily be possible without technology. And then in terms of redefinition, this really allows for the creation of new learning tasks formerly that would be inconceivable without technology. So let's look at an example of how the Satmar model actually rolls out here. So here's a learning goal that's defined as demonstrating mastery of a math content here. So when we look at substitution, this student would then download a PDF, let's say, complete it and return it electronically to the teacher. So that's really substitution. So that's really a direct replacement for a task normally done without technology. So instead of a worksheet being handed into the teacher, it's just done electronically. And so when we look at the next level of the Satmar model, augmentation, so here this student may be assigned online practice problems, and they're able to receive some instant feedback on the correct or incorrect responses. So this experience is still very similar. There's still a very similar learning experience, but there's a little bit of augmentation in the learning that happens with the student. So it's a little bit more effective because maybe that instant feedback would not be available without the technology. And then as we move through, we're now thinking about how to really use technology to modify the learning and transform learning. So when we're able to use adaptive technology, we're able to get real-time data as it relates to the students' needs and their performance. So this is really modifying the learning experience. So students now can also become creators of content at this level and really begin to use multiple modalities to show mastery and define their learning experiences. And then finally, when we move into redefinition, this is when you have students engaging with technology in ways that they would never be able to without technology. So creating this dynamic learning experience where students are using digital resources to really create, learn, transform, and co-collaborate and create with their peers. So redefining the learning experience for students so transformation is taking place in the classroom. So the last hallmark is really looking at implementation models. And there are several implementation models that you can consider along your journey from traditional classrooms to personalized classrooms. And I'm going to go through a few here. Some are maybe familiar, some maybe not so much. We're going to cover the ones that are, probably most familiar to most of you out there. The one that you see on the screen here says homework. And we know that this is not a formal model, but it is a great starting point for teachers to begin personalizing learning without changing traditional classroom practices. So if you want to try something right away, this is a great place to start. So this is where you can use adaptive software for at-home practice toward mastery. So it's an excellent use of technology if you have technology available to your students. And so data, and then of course that technology, that feedback will provide you with data to really support the student learning gains. So differentiating homework based on the learner's needs can be accomplished with or without technology, but it's a great way to begin the personalization journey and supporting students as well. So this next model, formerly known as the lab rotation. So because most schools are not one-to-one with devices in the classroom yet, there are these great push-in computer or device carts that many schools now have. And it's a great way to create the personalized learning experience when lessons require technology. So this in-class rotation, or whole group rotation, if you will, really allows teachers to rotate an entire class through a series of online and offline activities while remaining in a single classroom. So the teacher can really control when the devices are being used, when there's large group instruction, even creating some small group opportunities as well. So having this type of access can really inspire a classroom teacher to really begin to take these gradual incremental steps toward crossing that bridge to personalization. flipped classroom, again, this is one that is most familiar to folks out there. Really asks students to access any introductory content or overview work that's often done at the beginning of class, to do that as homework outside of the classroom. So students can really view all of those videos, any other resources or reading. They can do that outside the classroom. So when students return to the classroom, they're now spending time on interactive, higher order thinking activities, and really being able to focus on materials that is really helping them with the understanding of the material. So this can precede a whole class discussion or debate, or in a small group or project-based learning that really challenges the understanding of the material. So this model really encourages collaboration, problem solving, and inquiry. And in addition, the teacher and peer support that's available, more readily available to students, is one of the high, I would say one of the high points of the flipped classroom, because they now have that concentrated time and opportunity to really work with each other and the teacher on the application. So let's look at the menu model. And this is where personalization really starts by the learning goals being set by the teacher and student. So personalization is at, kind of the cornerstone of this model. So the student is provided with a playlist, so opportunities and options for how they want to engage with lessons, and as well as showing mastery. So there's a menu consisting of a variety of pathways that the student can take to show mastery of each of the goals. And then the flex model, again, not used much, but this is really where online learning is the backbone of a flex model. So personalization really begins with collaborative planning, again, between the teacher and the student. The goals are set, and then the teacher, the students and teachers really construct that plan, goal set, and then the teachers are really now moving into the facilitator role, really serving as a guide as needed as goals and plans are shifting with students. And the final, this final model is one that we know that most folks use and are more familiar with. And so this gets to the classroom rotation model, which is very similar to the traditional classroom rotation, which most elementary teachers are familiar with. So this is where students are actually rotating through learning stations. The difference here is that in order to create a blended learning, personalized learning experience using a station rotation, at least one of the stations has to use technology. So the number of stations and where technology is incorporated really all depend on the learning objectives. So station rotation will allow students more than one way to engage and apply information. So for an example, if you have adaptive technology in a station, you can really create a personalized learning experience and really afford students the opportunity to use dynamic creation tools to show mastery. So this could be for practice. It also can be, to advance students to the next level. So some examples of the types of stations may include a small group pull-out station with teachers to really reteach a part of the lesson. A station, like I just mentioned, using adaptive technology for additional practice or advancing a lesson, or a station for small group peer-led instruction for independent practice. So these could be online or offline lessons that are happening and learning that's happening in these stations. Again, one station really should incorporate technology, but the other stations don't necessarily need to have technology to be effective. And so these, again, are just some examples to consider when designing your classroom stations. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Janet, where she's going to talk to us about an example of a school that's doing awesome things around classroom rotation.
Thank you for letting me know that I was muted. Okay, so I'll start again. Thanks, Cassandra, for showing us a variety of implementation models and the 6 hallmarks. I'm going to be showing, oh, I don't want to start the video yet. I'm going to be showing, a variety of videos, a few videos that that are going to show Dean Deaver, a teacher in Riverside, working with some students in an adaptive program. This happens to be a program that I helped create, Redbird Math, which is a great program. There are other really good programs out there too. So please don't view this as pushing Redbird, but rather what I'd like you to do is watch this video, which is students, teachers, administrators talking about their experiences. It's not scripted, so you'll be listening for different things that actually support the idea of students being lifelong learners and learning growth mindsets and some of these other things. So I'm going to show a short first clip. As you hear things you think are worth noting, please put it in the chat box, and then I'll pause for a second and talk about the things that I heard there, and we'll move through 3 short clips about this. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. That should do it.
My name is Dean Deaver. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Monroe Elementary in Riverside, California.
My name is Tina Lanu, and I'm the personalized learning coach at Monroe Elementary.
My name is Dr. Cecilia Churchwell, and I'm the principal here at Monroe Elementary School in Riverside.
We as a society have this mentality that either you're good at math or you're not good at math, and that's just how you're born with it. My goal as a 19-year veteran teacher is getting that mindset to change. So before Redbird, it was just really a lot of trying to find different things here and there, whether it be paper versions or booklets, even some online programs that I've tried. They just weren't keeping the students engaged, and it wasn't at the right rigor. My whole goal is to get my students the resources they need, and so looking at Redbird was exactly that. It found out exactly what level they were at and helped them move at their own pace.
I was first at a 4th grade level, now I'm in a 5th grade level.
You did really good. If they were struggling in a certain concept, Redbird kicks them back to practice at a level that they need to understand that skill. Assessment drives the instruction. So the assessment that it provides for me, the data it gives, I can now adjust either my rotations, my small groups, my overall instruction. That helps me out quite a bit.
Okay, so some of the things that Dean and the kids said in that video was that they were learning that effort makes a difference, that Dean can personalize, he can use the data he's got to impact his instruction. These are the kinds of things we expect to hear from people who are personalizing the learning. Okay, we're going to go on to the next.
But I remind myself that it doesn't matter if I don't get it right, it's just that I'm learning.
Deep down inside, they realize it's challenging, but they know it's good for them. And it's challenging in a way that it's not overwhelming.
I've never been able to do decimals. It's teaching me how to do decimals, adding decimals, subtracting them, multiplying them. It's teaching me many different things.
For them having that where I'm at, the path that I need to go on, that's personalized for them, really makes the difference in them taking that ownership and knowing, okay, this is where I'm at, this is the growth that I've made in a week.
All right, now you know what you're gonna do next?
Yeah, being challenged without being overwhelmed, that's a really key benefit from personalized learning and adaptive software that actually assesses where kids' zone of proximal development is, where they really need to be learning. Super important thing for them that to be challenged, because if it's too easy, who cares? If it's too hard, you give up. So this is one really key benefit of personalizing the learning, is that the kids are realizing that their effort makes a difference. They engage more because they can see how their effort is changing their learning. And then here, Dean and the student are talking about them taking ownership of their learning. So this is just it's so encouraging to me to hear these folks talking about these benefits of personalized learning. Now here comes the last slide.
They love getting on Redbird. They love the, the games, the different activities that they can get to, and it really helps them to get to the core. So, and it also helps with the personalized learning because they can be on Redbird independently while the teacher is working with another group on some other core instruction.
With personalized learning, I feel like you're taking that, you're not taking the teacher out of the equation, but you're really opening those walls. So these students are not, they're not coming to school now to be taught. They're coming to school to learn. They're using all the resources, the technology that they have to learn outside of the classrooms.
Because really, that's what I want my students to be. I want them to be learners. I want them to be problem solvers. And this is just another aspect of doing it. And it's just a fun way. We'll call it math, great. But in life, we want them to be learners and problem solvers. Yep. All right, so you need to do the plan on that one, right? I'm seeing them engaged more. I'm seeing them wanting to just be okay with trying it. And I think that's the biggest part. Now, in terms of scores, that's gonna happen. And I'm already seeing the students approaching problems differently than just the standard algorithm or just the standard, hey, I'm just gonna guess. They're willing to actually put some time and effort into it because they learned that from Redbird.
So from that final one, probably my favorite line in the whole thing is when Dean says, okay, they'll learn, they're learning to learn. Okay, we'll call it math. And I think that's one of the things I always talk about when I talk about Redbird math, or really anytime I teach math. It's not about, even though I love math, it's not about the topic of math. It's about helping kids learn how to learn, how they learn best, how to persevere. And these are the kinds of things that we need to be addressing to make students into tomorrow's leaders and learners. And this is not only what Redbird and adaptive software can do, but it's what we're trying to do with personalized learning overall. So I'm going to move on now to hand it back to Cassandra, so she can talk about how to build that bridge, from traditional learning to innovative learning.
Thanks, Janet. So I love to hear these examples of from the field of how this is actually being realized at schools and districts. And so the next example that you're going to see here is one of those that I am super excited and proud of because I actually work with this district. It's the Rio School District in Oxnard, California. And this district is a great example of hallmark number one, which is really putting teachers first and thinking about the professional development and the rich supports that are needed to build confident teachers to actually cross this bridge from traditional to personalized learning. So just a little bit of a backdrop around how and where this district started. So the superintendent and the leaders in the school district, and this is really important, it's the leaders in the school district that actually decided that personalized learning could meet their instructional needs. And they had challenges like many districts, and some of their challenges included addressing the technical and instructional needs in the classroom while providing, wanting to provide personalized, engaging, differentiated, and cost-effective professional development to their principals and teachers, who, of course, were all at varying stages of buy-in and tech proficiency. So the superintendent and the district leaders really initiated what we called an in-depth blended learning opportunity analysis. So this really examined and reviewed each one of their schools and its readiness to successfully implement blended learning strategies. So out of that analysis, we used, with the leadership team, we created a plan for change, and this was where, creating that bridge. So from where they were to where they wanted to be. And so the leadership team actually worked first with principals by initiating leadership coaching sessions for the principals, and this included online and in-person coaching sessions with the team. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, they started with the leadership team and the principals. So this really enabled the administrators to really get prepared to support teachers as they were, requesting teachers to really implement blended instructional practices in student-centered classroom environments. So the principals and leaders began to create these personalized learning environments for the teachers and supported them in moving towards more personalized environments for students. So in the meantime, they were handling the logistics, of course, of, as we mentioned in one of the hallmarks, the technology infrastructure and the tools and things like that were being addressed, because we know that that is an important part of this process. So the transformation began to happen as teachers changed their teaching delivery, and their students began to do more inquiry-based learning, which is, again, where the principals and the leadership team really wanted to focus. So we started to see the physical setup of classrooms changing. They created better spaces and opportunities for project-based learning. Teachers started to use Google Docs to engage students and increase student collaboration. And students, just started demonstrating mastery in a variety of ways and even supported each other with a variety of groups, small groups in the classroom. So they really took ownership of this process, and they started with the administrators and the principals so that they felt confident and prepared to support teachers in this journey as well. And a lot of times that's what we hear from teachers, that they are excited about creating these experiences for their students, but they don't have the support necessarily from the administrator or their principal. And so having that opportunity to really kind of co-create this experience was really what made all the difference in this district. So you see here one of my favorite people, Mr. Hernandez. So as a result of building this bridge for teachers, they actually experienced student gains in test scores. So they increased by 7% in ELA and 4% in math. Now this may not sound like a lot in terms of gains. However, compared to the other 3 districts that all decreased in scores, this was a huge win for Oscar and the team there. And so he noted that he's hoping to actually do this again next year on an increased level. So part of where they spent their time was having 97.9% of their teachers and administrators actually participating in online and in-person PD for 245 days out of the school year. So they really spent over 200 hours learning how to become 21st century teachers and really understanding the foundations of blended learning to create these learning environments that we want for our students. And so as Mr. Hernandez says, he goes, I really think we are moving in a good direction, and I hope that we can, again, see these gains next year on an increased level. So the leadership team really believes that their success was directly related to implementing PD and curriculum with fidelity. They believe that that was a key factor in their success. And they had some non-negotiables, as you see, quoted from Mr. Hernandez, and those non-negotiables included their PD courses, which they were, again, differentiated for where their teachers were, and their supplemental programs for their students. So creating some opportunities for adaptive learning and technology to really support them in this journey. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janet to close us out. But if there are any questions about real school districts, please go ahead and put those questions in the chat. We'd be happy to speak with you about that.
So just to summarize, I want to give just a few, 2 or 3 minutes for questions at the end. We talked about building a bridge, and everybody's on their personalized journey on that bridge. And sometimes you can feel like you're alone, but remember, there are a lot of people on that bridge. So take time to connect with them, take time to talk to them, yell ahead to somebody up the bridge, look back to people behind you, connect, and we can certainly learn from each other. And there's a variety of ways. We've talked a little bit about them. You may have seen some stuff go through in chat, but there's a variety of ways to stay connected through social media, through online courses, through PLNs, lots of ways to stay connected as you make this journey, and you're not alone. Cassandra, any last things to say before we move?
No, I think you're right. As I mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, some folks are going to take baby steps, and that's just fine. Progressing forward is the goal. And as Janet said, you have support with other teachers who are exactly where you are. So exactly where you are is fine. Again, there are some great opportunities to start along this path in a very incremental way, such as the homework example that we shared earlier. But we will be providing some resources at the end of the webinar to really support you in this process as well.
And I think this is back to Jenna now. I can't hear Jenna. Is there something going on with her technology?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet, Cassandra. Sorry about that. We'll go ahead and get a question from Carrie. She says, how do you personalize your classroom on that innovative level when you don't have paraprofessional or aide support? Also, how do you do this without being one-to-one with technology?
Cassandra, you want to start?
I think that's I'll start. I think that's a great question. And I think that's one of the myths that teachers have, that they have to have devices for all students, and that, or else they can't start this process, or that they have to have another person in the classroom. And I always say the technology that you have can serve as see that as your assistant in the classroom. So if you have 3 devices or 2 devices, there's still an opportunity to create an experience for your students. Again, as we talked about, one of the models was the station rotation. You don't have to have, 5 stations or 3 stations. So maybe it's just a couple stations to start with, wherever you're most comfortable. But if you do have access to some devices, that is definitely a beginning point. Begin to think about how to use the data that you have, really knowing where your learners are, and creating that experience for a rotation, maybe opportunity, so that you can begin to create these experiences a little bit at a time. Janet, you want to add anything?
Yep. So yeah, I want to add. Really remember, I started off with Jane Ellen Whittier, who started personalizing in the 50s before technology was available. So it's doable without technology. Technology helps. Technology allows you to scale and do it more frequently. But data, whatever data you can get, and using software that gives you data gives you more information about where each individual student is, and then use that to impact the kinds of instructional experiences you have, and look for ways to involve students in planning their own work.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. We have several questions that are still coming in, but unfortunately we are at time. So we will follow up with each of you directly to get your questions answered. I want to thank you both, Janet and Cassandra, for presenting on this topic today, and also thank you all for attending. We hope you gained some valuable insight into this great topic. Please visit mheonline.com/personalbest to learn more about our suite of personalized learning solutions. Again, thanks to our presenters, and thanks for attending, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you.